Greetings and welcome to LA Quill. Today we're diving into chapter 31 of Arianna's tale. Damuk stood at the bow of the ship, looking out over the sea. They'd made better time than he'd anticipated, partially due to the mage winds he and the other mages had conjured. Everyone wanted this mission over with as quickly as possible. Not one of them wanted to be here for longer than absolutely necessary, and each was determined to do all they could in order to accomplish their mission as soon as they could manage. He'd left Arianna just over 3 weeks ago, though it seemed to him to have been much longer. It had taken almost 2 weeks to sail from Imperial waters to the area where he had first encountered the Muradeen. They were now in the waters just off the northern coast of the Republic, south of the northern range, but still nowhere near where the Republican ships might be. These were the waters where the Muradeen would be, where Damuk had first encountered the beast, assuming it hadn't moved on by now. If it was still under Cybil's control, it should be here, lying in wait. Damuk shifted his gaze to the other 2 ships that had sailed with him. They were staggered, as far apart as they could manage and still be able to see if a scarlet banner was hoisted. No one had raised the alarm yet. No one had even seen the Muradeen. Most of the men had never even been on a ship before, and there had been regular bouts of seasickness at the beginning of the voyage. He smiled slightly. If they had encountered the Muradeen in that first week, they would have been easy prey. It was fortunate that the time had been spent reaching their destination, and not doing battle. The sailors had been trained on the seas, but his men had not. Since his men were so inexperienced on the water, they were using a system to communicate that worked well on the battlefield. Colored banners that were erected to indicate specific messages. Scarlet, for example, would mean that the Muradeen had been spotted. He had squires watching very closely for any attempt to communicate by the other ships. The boys were glad to get a task more adult than the usual menial chores they were assigned. Returning his eyes to the sea, Damuk waited impatiently, fingering the dagger at his waist. He was ready to use the dagger to cut through any magical defenses the Muradeen had, and then he'd use his own magic to defeat the creature. At least, that was the plan. He wasn't sure that his powers were great enough to overcome the Muradeen, even without whatever defenses it may or may not possess. After all, it had once been worshipped as a god. Worship gave a creature a different sort of power. In the event that he wasn't strong enough, the men had several mundane weapons to use against the creature, weapons not normally present on seafaring vessels. They were as prepared as they were likely to get. Damuk looked once again at the other ships. Still nothing. This was becoming frustrating in the extreme. He knew that it was important that they destroy the Muradeen, that they stop Cybil, but he wanted to go home. He calculated that Arianna would now be almost 5 months pregnant. He wanted to be with her, to watch their child grow. Everything else seemed secondary now, including the Muradeen. He had even almost forgotten about Icon now. There was a sharp cry from above him, and he glanced up quickly. The young Squire Nurius was in the crow's nest, and he was pointing wildly just in front of them. Every eye followed his gesture, almost in slow motion. For a moment, everyone froze. The squire at the bow raised his red flag, not even waiting for the order. The boy hadn't needed to wait. Everyone on board could see the Muradeen. It was rising out of the water almost directly in front of them. The creature was perhaps the ugliest thing he had ever seen. It was long and thin, perhaps only a meter wide. Its body coiled and writhed in a way that made everyone's skin crawl, and no one doubted how powerful those coils were. Its eyes were close together and glowing a sickly shade of green. Its fangs dripped with what he assumed to be poison, though no one wanted to test that theory. Its leathery wings were slightly torn, and its scaly skin was a horrible shade of gray. Those scales were surely razor-sharp, and it was huge, larger than the entire ship. Damuk hadn't remembered the immense size of the thing, and he was glad of that, or he might not have undertaken this journey. Damuk drew the blade from its sheath, ready for battle. He jumped into the rigging and began to climb. "Get me closer," he shouted to Perrin below him. He didn't wait to see if his orders were obeyed. He felt it in a moment anyway as the ship lurched forward. They came within just a few feet of the creature, who was now looking at the ship as if it would make a very good dinner. He pulled himself up on the yardarm, working his way to the very edge, closest to the Muradeen. He would only get one shot at this. To his mage sight, the creature glowed with a pattern of intricate energies, much like a spider's web, both its own and those of the mage who had summoned it. Damuk recognized the energies of his aunt, and knew that his father had been correct in assuming that Cybil would add her own spells to protect the creature as it served her purposes. Any doubts he'd had about his aunt's evil nature were laid to rest in that moment. He would destroy this thing, and part of her power along with it. His father had explained that the blade required an intelligence to wield it, so Damuk could not merely throw the dagger and be done with it. He must be in control of the blade, which meant he had to get right next to the creature. That meant closer. Closer was not any safer, but there was no other option left available to him. Not thinking about it any longer, Damuk jumped from his perch. He struck with swift assuredness, a product of years of training. He flew through the air and could feel the protections of the Muradeen attempting to wrap themselves around him, eliminate him as a threat. They were active shields designed to destroy all dangers, so the dagger had no effect on them. Damuk held the blade before him as he pulled his own shields even tighter, thankful for all the years his father had drilled him in shielding. His shields would not fail him now, not when he needed them most. The silver blade began to glow white, ever so gently. The blade hit the protections that surrounded the creature, and the force of it almost tore his arm off, and certainly did a fair amount of damage to his shoulder. It was like hitting steel. Only years of being taught never to drop a blade kept his grip sure. Now it was as if he was hanging in mid-air. Just as he thought that the blade would not work, the slight glow turned into a brilliant white fire, and Damuk was forced to close his eyes against it. He didn't need his eyes to see what was happening. His mage sight, not dependent on his physical eyes, showed him everything he needed to know. He'd expected the blade to shatter the protections of the Muradeen, but that was not what happened. Instead, the web of magic surrounding the Muradeen changed in color, from the sickly green to a pure white. At first, this change was limited to the area around the blade of the dagger, but within moments, everything was awash in white as the protective energies were transmuted into pure energy with no purpose. Then, ever so slowly, the white light started to retract into the dagger. All of it. This produced a single pure tone so loud that it blocked out all other sounds. Damuk felt the energy moving up his arm and realized that he was absorbing the energy of the transmuted protections into himself. He didn't have time to contemplate the possible ramifications of this. As the light was made a part of Damuk, the deafening tone faded. Damuk suddenly found himself thrown against the creature, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He paused for a moment and looked down. For a moment he thought that he'd stabbed himself with the dagger. Instead, he realized he'd almost killed himself on one of the razor-sharp scales. Adjusting his grip to relieve the pain in his chest, Damuk wondered briefly why the creature hadn't killed him already. It took him a moment to realize that the Muradeen was in shock. Its distraction allowed Damuk the moment he needed to spring back into the rigging of the ship. He sheathed the dagger as he allowed himself to fall back to the deck. For a moment he chose not to move. If the creature wanted to kill him right now, so be it. He knew he should deal with the creature now, kill it before it could strike them, but he felt strange, like his skin was stretched too thin. He felt as if there was just too much of him to be contained in his physical body. It was a new and unique sensation. Not entirely unpleasant, just unique. Around him, the men were readying their weapons, preparing to attack the monster. The other two ships were just arriving at their side, proving that everything had taken longer than he'd originally thought. Probably a quarter candle mark, maybe even longer. As everyone prepared for battle, and even began firing arrows at the beast, Damuk just lay there, watching the Muradeen. Something wasn't right. They shouldn't be doing this. He wasn't sure how he knew that, but he knew it with quiet assurance. The arrows were merely bouncing off the beast's hide. It would take the ballista they had brought to kill the Muradeen, if it could be killed at all. No one was really certain that a creature once worshipped as a god could really die. The ballista was almost ready to be fired now as several soldiers prepared it, assisted by nearby sailors. The prince stared hard at the ballista. A thought was moving in his mind, but far too quickly for him to grasp it just yet. Damuk looked again at the Muradeen. It had already smashed one of the ships and was going to crush another in just a few moments. As he looked, his vision changed. It was almost like double vision. He could faintly see lines of horrible red energy weaving in and amongst the body of the Muradeen. He recognized them somehow, even though he'd never seen them before. Blood magic. He ignored the fact that he shouldn't be able to see any traces of blood magic. That was part of the appeal of blood magic. It was nearly impossible to see the traces of energy normally left by more elemental forms of magic. He knew that what he was seeing was true, but it took him a moment to really understand, to force his sluggish mind to function. When he finally managed it, he was shocked. It was a compulsion spell designed to force the creature to obey. Damuk finally understood. The Muradeen wasn't attacking them because it wanted to. It didn't even want to be here. It would much rather be in the deep waters, living its life in its native habitat. Damuk understood this now, and he knew what he had to do about it. He stood as quickly as his tired body would allow. "Hold!" he shouted. Everyone stopped and looked at him. His own men would obey him instantly, but he wasn't sure about the sailors. He found Captain Perrin and grabbed the man's arm. "Keep your men from firing." He didn't give Perrin a chance to respond, just ran to the bow of the ship. He could still feel the energy from the dagger coursing through him, but he was uncertain of his ability to control it. It was more power than anything he'd ever touched. It ought to be, since it was power not only of Cybil's protections, born of blood magic, but of the shields that were inherent to the Muradeen itself, which were hundreds of years old, maybe thousands. Magic that old was reportedly impossible to control. There was only one thing for it. He had to try. He extended both hands toward the Muradeen, allowing the magic stored within him to flow back out the way it had come. He gave it purpose and direction with his thoughts, and then decided to let the magic do what it would. He could only give it an idea of what he wanted. He could not truly control it, not without killing himself. Damuk was counting on the fact that the Muradeen wanted what he did, to free it from the compulsions that bound it to these awful deeds. The magic was still a pure white, transmuted into this by the power of the dagger. It wasn't his own energy, since his native color was a soft blue. It was no longer protective in nature, but thoroughly pure and ready to be utilized. That purity was the reason Damuk's plan would work. All the magic had to do was surround the beast, to neutralize the compulsions. It was simpler than Damuk had imagined it could be, but that didn't make it easy. The power ripped through Damuk, forcing him to close his eyes, and tore into the Muradeen. He felt pain the likes of which he'd never felt before. The energy was beyond anything he had ever known. Finally, Damuk found the strength to open his eyes. The Muradeen was again surrounded by white light, too bright to truly look at. This light combated the evil red of the compulsions, absorbing them as a sponge absorbed water. It took only a moment, and then the light faded, leaving only the creature before him. Damuk fell to his knees, knowing he'd never been so exhausted in his life, and hoped to never feel this way again. He was completely drained, physically, magically, and mentally. No human should ever channel that kind of raw power, not if they wanted to live to tell the tale. He looked up at the Muradeen, knowing that if it chose to attack now, there was nothing he could do about it. He didn't have the strength. He accepted this with a calm assurance that the beast would choose not to harm them. Somehow, he just knew it was over. The Muradeen watched him for several long moments, and their eyes met. Somewhere deep in his mind, Damuk heard, "My thanks, human." And then the Muradeen disappeared beneath the waves. Captain Perrin was now at his side, as was Nereus. "We'll give chase, we will," the captain stated. Damuk shook his head, his vision blurry and his ears ringing. "No, leave it be. It's no more threat to us." He stood with the aid of his squire. "We sail for home." He allowed Nereus to help him back to his cabin. He knew that it would be some time before he recovered. It didn't matter. He had the time now. Inwardly, he smiled. They had done it. The Muradeen was no more threat to them or to anyone. Hopefully, the backlash of power had damaged Cybil, if not killed her wherever she was. Icon would eventually be found. He could return home and marry his betrothed, then watch his child come into the world. He would get his happy ending now, and sooner rather than later. And that's our tale from L.A. Quill today. If you enjoyed this chapter, let me know your favorite moments in the comments below. Until next time, may your stories always be magical.